Hello, class, and welcome to Accounting 526. I'm really excited to work with you all during the semester. I'm Professor Fox. We will be learning to code in the incredible Python programming language, a tool and asset that I really think is going to be very beneficial for you all as you proceed forth into the workforce. Now, the first thing you might notice is that this is a video on Jupyter Notebooks and Visual Studio Code. You might be saying to yourself, wait, I thought we were learning Python. Why aren't we using the Python application? The answer is that there really isn't a Python application with a user interface. There is one, but it's not very user-friendly. Python is a programming language that runs under the hood, so similar to an engine in a car, so to speak. Instead, we use applications like Visual Studio Code to write our Python code, and Visual Studio Code then uses Python to execute the code that we've written. Python code can be written in many different applications. We call these applications integrated development environments, or IDEs for short. Visual Studio Code is an example of an IDE, and the one we will be using in this class because it has a nice plugin for both Python and something called Jupyter Notebook. Now, Jupyter Notebook is an interactive computing environment that allows beginners to run Python code in an interactive way. It also provides an interface that allows for formatted information and visuals to be displayed right in the code editor, okay? Making each Jupyter Notebook file look like a chapter from a really visually appealing coding textbook, similar to like an accounting textbook for this class. Now, before watching this video, you should already have followed the instructions available on Canvas to download and install both Python and Visual Studio Code. These instructions also included details on how to install the Visual Studio Code plugins for both Python and Jupyter Notebook. Please be sure that you've completed those instructions before continuing with this video. Now, I'd like you to follow along as I walk through some of the basics of Visual Studio Code environment. So open up your Visual Studio Code application and feel free to pause and experiment with different tools and features as we go along. You should have open the Explorer panel on the left. If it's not open, click on this button here. Okay. This will open up the Explorer panel, which should show your Accounting 526 folder that you've created with the installation instructions. If it's not there, go back and set it up. All right. So let's first create a Jupyter Notebook file. As you've noticed, there's a lot of different files here for me. You won't see much in here. And that's okay. You're going to add folders and files into this as we go along. So for our first folder, oh, we don't want to put it there. We just want to put it in the Accounting 526. Okay. And we're going to call this Jupyter Notebook Tutorial. Okay. Now within this folder, we're going to create a file and just call it the same thing. Jupyter However, we're going to end the file with IPYNB. And now this is just a file ending for a Jupyter Notebook file. Okay. So now that we have this file set up, the first thing I want to talk about is the difference between the types of cells that we can use within Jupyter Notebook. We have Markdown cells and code cells. So let's add both a Markdown cell and a code cell by clicking on these buttons above. So there's our code cell, there's our Markdown cell. Now, as you can see here to the right, there are indicators of what sort of cell we have open. Hence, this one here is a Markdown cell, which we can change to a code cell, labeling it Python. So now Python indicates that it's a code cell. So again here, same thing, we can change this to a Markdown cell, and vice versa. The other thing you'll notice here too is we can delete cells with this trash can. So we're going to delete this top one, and proceed forward with the tutorial. Now, all right, so let's start with the Markdown cell. A Markdown is a language that is used for formatting text. Okay, we use it to add discussion and explanation in a Jupyter Notebook file, and you'll see it throughout the semester in each of our classes. Markdown supports headings, bold and italic text, links, images, and so much more. Okay. It's also very simple to learn. To create headers, we can use a simple hashtag at the beginning of the line. And the more hashtags we use, the smaller the header becomes. So let's see what this looks like as we add it to our code. Now to execute this command, I'm going to hold down Shift and press Enter. As you can see here, we can see our 5 different headers, and they gradually get smaller as we went down using more hashtags. Okay. Now let's continue editing the Markdown cell. To do so, we're just going to double click in here, and now we can edit again. So let's add some text into here now. The first one we're going to add is italicized text by wrapping the text in stars. So we're going to add a 1 star and then just write this is italicized text. Finish closing it with a star, Shift Enter. We can now see that we have italicized text. The next one is bold text. So to do this one, we're going to add 2 stars and say this is bolded text. Close it with 2 stars. Now we have bolded text. Now we can nest the 2 together. So we'll start with the bolded text with an italicized word. To show you what that looks like. Okay, and then finally, the other way around works as well. Oh, I spelled this wrong. So, okay. Good. So you can see that both different types of text can be used, and some of the text can be used simultaneously in what we call a nest, called nesting it, okay? What we can also do is create lists and numerical, whether they're numerical or bulleted. So let's do numerical first. This is similar to what you'd see in a Microsoft Word document. Okay. Now for a bulleted list. To indicate bullets, we'll use dashes. And then we can also create sub items or subparts of our bullets by simply indenting, right? Okay, so use the tab, add another dash. We'll call this item 1.1, and then we can do it again and call this item 1.1.1. See, nice for making for bolted lists. We can also include web addresses that then create hyperlinks to the web address we want to go to. So for this one, we're just going to go to Google. We can now click it. It pulls up Google, right? And now let's think about adding maybe an image to our Markdown. Hello class image. Here's the one we want. Let's copy this image and now add it back into our final header area. Hello class. So that's about all we need to know about Markdowns. Okay. Although you won't be required to write any Markdown text for yourself, you should understand what the cells are, right? So now you can kind of see. For example, if you accidentally write your Python code in a Markdown cell, you will find very quickly that running the cell does not execute your code. Okay. In addition, you will likely at some point accidentally click into a Markdown cell, right? So now you know how to navigate through those to some degree at least. So, okay. Now let's talk about code cells. These cells are labeled with Python in the lower right-hand corner of the cell, which I alluded to earlier here, right? These cells are where you'll be spending your time coding in your Jupyter Notebook files. My goal in this video, though, is not to teach you how to code in Python. We have a whole semester to work on that. So let's just use some of the basic code to illustrate how these cells work. All right. For example, let's create a variable called name and then print the name. Now to execute the code, there are a few options. I've been using Shift Enter, and it's likely the one that you're going to use all semester as well. Basically, what that means is it's going to execute the current cell that we're working in. So Shift Enter, boom. It's now executed the cell. This check mark indicates that it's done it correctly. Okay. Now, let's print the variable. Perfect. There beneath our cell, we see the variable printed. So we see the content of the things that we're creating. We can print it to see that. Okay. Now you may have noticed that there are also incrementing numbers besides each cell, right? So it's a little small. So let's zoom in here a little bit. I'm also going to close this Explorer page just so we can see a little bit better. It's there. I just hit it down, minimized it. So there's incrementing numbers beside each cell. So here there's 1, here's 2. This is called the execution order. In Jupyter Notebooks, cells don't have to be executed from top to bottom. These numbers keep track of the order in which cells were run. This is important because as you work on your Jupyter Notebook file, you may think that you have a variable available to you because a cell comes after a previous cell that defines the said variable. However, if you haven't run the previous cell, that variable will not be available to you. So let's use an example here. So my name equals Zach. Now let's add another cell. Oh, it's there. So we should have that, right? So now if I print my name, oh, wait, we get an error. That's because my name has not been defined yet, right? Here's the first cell, 1, 2. We actually didn't run this one, so it's not there, and went to this one next. So that's 3, right? So the order matters here. The execution order matters. Okay. Now, before turning in a project or finishing up a quiz, we're going to learn about what's a good way to check what you're doing. And the first thing that you want to do is select the clear all outputs option. That clears up everything that we've been working on. And since we don't necessarily want this code here because it was illustrating a point, we now can use the restart button as well. This is going to delete all the variables that we've created. So like name, all these stored variables that Python has created and remembers. The output was just deleted with the clear out all outputs. Now when we hit restart, everything will get deleted, including the name variable that we defined already. So now I hit that button, I hit restart, everything should be gone. So now to check our work to make sure everything's working properly, we can now say run all, and boom, everything's worked. Right? So we're in good shape. Everything's working as it should. All right. So if we need to say, so as I talked about earlier, here's how we change the type of cell we're working in from Python, from a code cell to a Markdown cell. As you run a cell, sometimes it can take a few seconds or even a few minutes to execute your code, depending on what you're working on. You can tell that a cell is currently working by looking at that rotating symbol, right? So we'll see that in a second. And also the incrementing timer that's next to it. Here, we have a check mark, meaning that it was successful and shows us that it was executed actually really fast in our timer. However, if you want to stop your code from executing, you can always press the interrupt button at the top of the screen. This will come in handy if you get stuck in an infinite while loop. And at some point in the semester, you're gonna get stuck. So let's see what that looks like. Okay. So there's our rotating symbol and our incremental timer. So this is a infinite loop, meaning that the code we've executed has no way to stop because it's checking a certain criteria, and that criteria keeps getting satisfied and met and just keeps running the code. So we hit this interrupt button and that stops it. Perfect. We've had it, it's done what we've wanted it to do. One of the things I love most about using an IDE like Visual Studio Code is that it also provides help boxes along the way for using functions, and then an autofill for variable names as you are typing. For example, let's create just a really long variable name. So this is a really long variable name, and just we're going to set it equal to 10. Okay. Now, if we want to print this variable, I can now just type the first few letters, and as you can see, there's a drop-down menu here to autofill. To autofill, I just hit tab now, and there it is. The variable name is in there, what we wanted it to be. Now I can hit Shift-Enter, boom, it prints us what we wanted in a much simpler and efficient way. There are also help prompts that pop up when we type code. For example, say we want to use the function replace. We type replace and then the parentheses and then hold still here, a little box comes up, right? And it tells us what we need to do. We need to first put in an old string and then a new string, and then we can replace it. We can execute the function, right? And so here it shows us it returns a copy with all occurrences of a substring old replaced by new. Okay. We'll talk more about this in class, but I just wanted to point it out here. Okay. All right. Now, as you write code, you'll often want to comment out or ignore code in a cell. You can do this by simply placing a hashtag in front of it. So hashtag name equals box now. The hashtag is going to keep it from running. The other way that we can do it is you can hold down Control and hit the /, right? That's just going to put in the hashtag for you. It's a little quicker keyboard command to get that done for you. We can also run bash commands. So bash commands are very helpful and things we're going to use often while working in Jupyter Notebooks. And these go in the front of our code. So for example, when we want to import a certain module, Python module, we add an exclamation point, and then this is essentially simulating running a code in the terminal or command prompt, right? So this is essentially going to allow us to install Python packages and a few other things throughout the semester. So here's an example of one. Pandas is a very common Python package we're going to use. So let's execute it. Boom. Very good. Requirement satisfied. Things are working well. We can also have it run other code like this that's going to generate a simple scatter plot for us, right? And this is just, again, to illustrate the point of what it can do, right? So when we execute this code, oh, something happened here. It's going to create a simple scatter plot, okay? I accidentally copied and pasted too much code within that last command. We can also create data frames and view them. So here's our data frame, simple as that. So now, before I finish this tutorial, I want to point your attention to the help menu up here, okay? Here there are some video tutorials that you can watch if you want more information about Visual Studio Code. The keyboard shortcuts reference is also a handy tool if you like using shortcuts rather than mouse clicks. But other than that, that's it for now. So hopefully this last part wasn't as confusing, as I was just kind of showing some figures that you can create and also databases that we're going to be working with. These are just previews of the things you'll be able to do more comfortably down the road. I'm excited to work with you this semester. The business world is becoming more and more data intensive, and I'm confident that the skills you learn in this class will help you stand out as someone who can work with data. Python to work with data in our ever-increasing digital business world. I'll see you all in class.